There it is. We're in Genesis this lovely evening. Almost to the end. Almost to the end. How long do we have? What do we got? Genesis 46. So, about 2 weeks? 2 weeks left? In case you're watching this later, or you're catching up and new with us, we do a number of these every week. There's a link to the Discord in the live chat pinned to the top. There's also a link in the description of all the videos. We have two channels that we do it on. This one and at Tattoo Theist, which is like my old personal one that's been demonetized and dragged through literal hell. But we do a topic discussion on Tattoo Theist, and then we do Bible studies here. On Thursday, we do an extra canonical text, so something outside of the combined canon. We did the Epic of Gilgamesh. We're now in the Book of Giants / Enoch, and that'll begin this Thursday, and then Sunday is always something out of the canon. And right now, and probably for the next 10 years, we'll be going through the canon chronologically, so in order of events. So after this, we'll move to the next order of events after Genesis, not the next book in the canon after Genesis, which is just an interesting way to read it if you never have. But Discord's great. Really good people, super smart people, a hell of a lot smarter than me. But tonight's good. This section of Genesis is good. It's good stuff. McRae Ranch. Good evening, precious family. I look forward to studying alongside all of you tonight. We already have 3 likes. Thank you for the YouTube. Yeah, do the YouTube stuff. We the Book of Giants is pushing new people here, which is great. For whatever reason, those videos do really well, and it's been a big help. But do the YouTube stuff so that we can get new and interesting people around. That's always real good. David, I do believe I owe you a snake to the dome of Joe this evening, which I shall fulfill. Good God. I don't know why I come here. I don't know why I live here, Cat. That's the actual question. It's hot in this room. Don't take my line, sir. I say that. Am here, yay. Well said. Well said. You were here first. You, as they say, win. You are the winner. David, I hope you don't think she's joking, because she is not. She is actually going to do that. What a winter wonderland in Texas, in the barn, 30 miles. Oh, whoa. Gusts feel like it's 20. Yeah, it's pretty wild. When was the ice storm in Texas? Was that 4 years ago? If you live there, you have to know what I'm referring to. I feel like that was 3 or 4 years ago. That was pretty wild. That was pretty insane. I say it when you're not home, too. When these dogs start acting like some fools, I mutter it. Slight inconvenience, I mutter it. My belt loop caught in the drawer handle, mumbling it. Yeah, well, that's fair. Yeah, the ice storm was crazy. I remember that, and listening to people talk about just the experience from their perspective as Texans was pretty insane. That's quite a thing to experience as a Texan. I think a lot of people don't understand how weird the weather can get in Texas. It's an odd thing. You just assume it's always a specific way, and there's no deviation from that. And it's just not true. Texas has gotten some pretty wild weather. Pretty insane. I want to say this too. So I put something in, I'm sure these guys have buried it. No, they haven't. Okay. I put something in the Bible section of Discord that if you are weird, like academically driven towards learning things in scope of religion and theology and all that stuff, I put a link to Xenodo, it's a study, basically, that gets continually updated. That is the first gospel, the gospel of the poor. It's a new reconstruction of Q, which was an author. It's the way that they reference the author. There's M, there's Q, L. But this is a reconstruction of Q and resolution of the synoptic problem based on Marcion's early Luke. And if you don't know about the drama that is between Marcion and the Gospel of Luke, it's very interesting. It may make you rethink much of how you view the Gospels in the New Testament. But all that aside, it's really interesting, the history, to get a much more zoned in view of how they came about, how the Gospel came about, what the influences were, what the earliest theologians like Origen were thinking as this was all happening, what they were writing about, Irenaeus. It's really good stuff. Mikkel said Marcion is legit. He is the most legit, in my opinion. The more I got real into Marcion years ago, and then, like a lot of things, I just kind of phased away, got into other stuff, started studying other stuff. But as of recently, the past handful of months, I've really shifted back to kind of the Marcionite view. And I've been more captivated with it, generally speaking, than I have been about anything theologically in a very long time. So I think someday in the near future, we'll do a Tuesday on either the how the New Testament was compiled, or earliest New Testament texts, or Marcion versus Luke and the Gospels in general. We'll do something like that so we can get into some of the historicity of it all, because it's wildly interesting. And it really, if you're honest with yourself, it completely twists the way you view the New Testament. And I feel like it's a very good thing. I still need to read through that. Yeah, you really should. It's extremely high quality. And they're continually updating it. One of the really interesting things, and then I promise we'll read, but one of the really interesting things that a very small group of academics are doing around Marcion right now is they're attaching data science to how they're practicing exegesis. So they're building databases around the Greek wording so that they can pull and extract specific data extremely quickly and compare some of these earlier fragmented texts from Marcion to the early Gospel of Luke. And they're creating like word webs so you can see, and they're just extrapolating all of this data in such a unique and interesting way where it's very easy to visualize, like, oh, there's something to this. There's something possibly that we've had wrong for a very long time. And it's wild. It's wild. More and more evidence seems to be coming to the forefront. But anyways, that's in the Bible on Discord if anybody wants to read it. It's not far up there, so just scroll up a bit. But real good stuff, man. Real good stuff. Is Pia around? Pastora, are you around? Here, I will post the link to that right here. Assuming it didn't cut off because it was too long. But it's in the Bible, and it's not far up if you open it. Just scroll up a very small amount, and it's right there. Friendly reminder for Joe to open Discord. Thank you very much. All right, Discord's up. She returned home. Yeah, Pastora, it's been real weird, just so you know. It's been very nice that David is also very enthusiastic, very positive, so that's been great. But, and no offense to David at all, because should both of you be absent, this place would be awful. It'd be terrible, because everybody else is serious, kind of. But at least we had David in your absence, but it is very nice to have you back. The emojis. It's just so much brighter. It's so much lighter. It's so much better. Pia went to the forest, but I returned yesterday. Did you literally go to the forest? Did you go on a retreat? I'm gonna get all of this stuff ready to go. I've ranted enough. Thanks for listening. But we'll get into it at some point because it's very interesting and extremely overwhelming too. So we're in 46 and everything's happened with Pharaoh. Joseph got the directive, like, bring your people back here. All is good. Bring dad, Israel, aka Jacob. Bring the brothers. Don't bring the livestock, he said, because you don't need them. Because you will be provided to you the best of Egypt. Interestingly enough, they bring it anyways. But we'll get into some of that. Ghost and I will fill you in on the forest. Joe, oh, good Lord. Okay, sounds good. My mind is immediately going to something that I don't want to say. A special kind of retreat where one experiences spiritual enlightenment. That's all I'll say. So Joseph brings his family to Egypt. So Israel, Jacob, took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Jacob's reasons for stopping here in Beersheba, we don't directly get it. But what we know for sure is that there's significance there because it's in chapter 21. Abraham arose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. 21. 31. Therefore that place was called Beersheba because both of them swore an oath. Both of them swore an oath. So there's significance to it. Stopping in Beersheba, Israel or Jacob, it may have been a sort of spiritual retreat, like I just said. It might have been divine enlightenment that he was looking for, because some of that was tied to geography in a lot of the Old Testament. So he went there, offered sacrifice to God, and God spoke to Israel, Jacob, in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. Then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. God spoke to Israel in visions of the night. Pretty obvious what he's talking about, but I thought this was interesting. It seems as though it's about a dream. That's the obvious thing, in my opinion. But it says here, the normal Hebrew word for dreaming, chalom, not shalom, Chalom, occurs in chapter 20, chapter 28, 31, and 37. Meaning, in some of the other scenarios where we're talking about dreams or visions through dreams, it's not the same word. So there's a bit of a disconnect with the Hebrew, which is just an interesting thing. So this is one of those things that if you wanted to really get down to it and see what was going on, you would hold this side by side with every other mention of a vision or a dream in Genesis specifically, and then you could broaden out through the whole Old Testament and just see, where does it delineate? What is different? Why is it different? Is it context? Is it the actual use case? Just, getting into some of the stuff like that. So Jacob, and he said, here I am. Then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. This was also interesting. So in the beginning of 3, I am God, the God of your father. I am God. The word is El, which we've talked a lot about, so I won't really go into it. El is the word that's used, which gives us kind of a drawback to several other positions in Genesis where the same term was used, which would be
like El.
Yep, correct. For the beginning of 3, I am God, El, the God of your father. However, the second God is Elohim. So it would be, I am El, Elohim of your father. It's an interesting note because you get it so close together. So some of the other divine encounters out of like 31, 33, 35, El was used. which some commentaries are saying that I found are saying that it may explain why Jacob was used for the verbal call in the beginning in 2, at the end of 2. God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob, rather than Israel, because God had given him that new name. Then he said, here I am. Then he said, I am God, I am El, the Elohim of your father, separation. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. The covenant with Abraham that then moves to Isaac, that now moves to Jacob, has just teetered down the line from the very beginning of Genesis. And now we're getting sort of Jacob's fruition of it. I will make you into a great nation. It's the same promise from the very beginning of Genesis, just repeatedly given to whoever the main character of the text has been. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. A little bit here. I'm just want to read this because I thought this was interestingly put. Though this may seem obvious given God's omnipresence, it is noteworthy in light of the notion of sacred geography. The Israelite notion that the God of Israel allowed foreign nations to be under the jurisdiction of other gods after the Babel event, which was a great thing to point out. I really like that got pointed out, because he said, I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again. In chapter 11, when we had the Babel event, we get this indication that God allows the foreign nations to be under control of other gods. It's very clearly written. Then in Deuteronomy chapter 4, we get another clear indication of this. Then in Deuteronomy chapter 32, we get another clear indication of this. And we've talked about it we've talked about it in the past for sure, that the Old Testament specifically never says there are no other gods. It says things like there are no other gods before me. It says things like don't worship other gods. Don't offer idols to other gods. So many will argue, well, it's insinuating that there are in fact other gods. They are just not Elohim. They're just not El. They're just not Yahweh. Whatever name you want to use. They're these lesser gods. And it's, at one point in the Old Testament, obviously everybody's aware, Israel falls to worshiping other gods and to practicing, call it sacrilege or pagan principles or anything like that. I just thought that was really an interesting way for them to word that. Something that otherwise is easy to just breeze by. Very clearly, explicitly written. I agree, Mikkel. And yet so often ignored or pretended like it didn't happen. Thanks, Pastora. Yeah, do the YouTube stuff, please. We're doing pretty well. New people, every once in a while wandering in. Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. The end of verse 4 there. Then Jacob set out from Beersheba. These sons of Israel carried Jacob, their father, their little ones and their wives in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry them. They also took their livestock and their goods, which they had gained in the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt. Jacob and all his offspring with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, all his offspring he brought with him into Egypt. Just an aside that I mentioned at the beginning, not that it matters at all, but because I'm weird, so it stood out to me, was that in the previous chapter, they were specifically told not to bring livestock, not to bring any of that stuff, because they would be given the best that Egypt had. I just found it kind of interesting that the author, at the very least, indicates that they did bring their livestock and their goods. So that they brought things that they were not supposed to. We're told they were not supposed to. I don't know if there's any significance whatsoever to that. I just found it kind of interesting. Verse 8. Now these are the names of the descendants of Israel, and we're not going to do that. So if you would like to read through them, then feel free. It's going to be verse 8 through 18. 8 through 19. One more time. 8 through 26. Actually, I thought it cut off right here. 8 through 26. literally just names. The sons of Gad, the sons of Rachel, the son of Dan, yada, yada, yada. And I don't feel like we need to painfully run through this. But I will read this. So for those verses that I just mentioned, 8 through 27, the genealogies arranged according to the mother of each brother in the order of Leah, Zilph, Rachel, and Bilhah contain numerous inconsistencies with other Old Testament genealogies for the sons of Jacob. If you compare this to Numbers 26 and 1 Chronicles 2 through 8, where we get another genealogy that is not consistent with what we get here. There's an inconsistency. This could, and now they're going to give you what their gymnastics or what their answer is. This could indicate that this genealogy, in parallel with the similar one in Exodus 1 through 7, focuses on people and reaching the symbolic number of 70, while others focus on clans. While 70 nations are listed in Genesis 10, here 70 people related to Israel or Jacob are listed. 70 people related to Israel who is Jacob are listed, suggesting that the nation of Israel functions as a new beginning for humanity, which is it's a decent answer. It's a decent way to try to reconcile the difference. The section lists the name of one of these next sections. It lists the names of Jacob's descendants, most of whom accompanied him to Egypt. Joseph and his sons were already there, if you're doing math in your head. Each list begins with one of Jacob's sons, grouped according to their mothers, yada, yada, yada. And so we'll run through a little bit of the math. So 4626 is when we pick back up. The total descendants of Israel, Jacob, again, that gets really confusing, especially if you're not reading it yourself. The total descendants of Jacob, given in verse 27, which we'll read in a second, is 70. This can be explained by the figure 66, referring just to those who came to Egypt, because some of them were already there. And Onan did not come to Egypt, but died in Canaan before the journey was made, so -2. Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, were born in Egypt and could also be subtracted. The figure 66 could also involve adding Dinah and subtracting Joseph. So there's a few ways that mathematically you can try to make sense of why the number wasn't quite accurate. One of the other answers that isn't often talked about is just the significance of the number 7 and 70 and anything having to do with 7. So then it wouldn't be surprising in any way whatsoever that the author wanted to use 70. One, because again, these were all passed down orally. So remembering 70 versus 66, a more obscure number, maybe that was easier. On top of possibly just the significance of the number 70. Outside of those is the math, where if we subtract these two people because they died on the way, and we subtract Dinah and subtract Joseph, well, then we end up with 66. Who knows? Honestly, who cares? I don't see any significance whatsoever in it. Inconsistent genealogies. I think genealogies skip generations, or some lists might include the original dead husbands who had to leave their wives, their brother who made it into other lists. Quite possibly, in some scenarios. I think that's fair. It's one of those things, man, where like the genealogies were something I had to go through in school, and was probably my least favorite thing to do in school, was to break down genealogies and to try to make the ties where the ties exist. One of the other just really common things is that so many people share the exact same name, and the authors of most of these texts did not give us nearly enough to, with absolute confidence, know who the heck is being talked about. So then you might do all of this work to connect a Jacob to this line, and all of the work down the line from that, come to find out, or never find out, that it was a different Jacob. And if you connect Jacob to these people, and then from that, all of those people have connections too. If you start that string of events wrong, everything else is wrong. And I watched that happen in when we were doing these like exercises in school, and you would just see students' faces go white because they had spent hours or days building out this theory. Come to find out, they messed one part of it up, and the entire thread became garbage, just a total throwaway. What? Screams and Cartman? Screw you guys, I'm going home. They're also patriarchal, so if a guy only had daughters, it could skip until the next stem appears. That's also very true. Yeah. Good point. Good point. I don't think the genealogy... Ghost said the genealogy stuff isn't something I've looked very much into. I don't think it's worth the time, personally. Unless you're looking for something very specific, I don't think it's worth the time. McRae Ranch said, I'm inspired by the HI's attempt to learn the genealogy of the Bible, but they sure do twist it to their narrative, for sure. Just like everything else. Just like everything else. Everything gets twisted to fit, personal bias. What I want to believe, I will figure out how to make it work. Eisegesis versus exegesis. Okay, fun stuff. 26. All the persons belonging to Jacob who came into Egypt, who were his own descendants, not including Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came into Egypt were 70. So there's the conclusion of what we were just talking about. Jacob and Joseph reunited. He had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to show the way before him in Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. Then Jacob prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel his father, where? In Goshen. He presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. When we talk of Goshen, or Goshen, this would likely be at least from Logos, the northeastern part of the Nile Delta. If you look it up on a map, makes sense to me. I'm not a geography pro, but what I do know about in the Fertile Crescent and where some of these stories lie in or around the crescent, this makes sense to me. But if anybody disagrees, I would like to hear it, because I'm not the best with the geography. I've learned enough to be able to visualize stuff, but that's about it. So Goshen, one thing I did want to point out, though, because I find this kind of stuff kind of interesting, is that in 2 verses, the author, for some reason, felt the need to say Goshen 3 times. One thing I've noticed with situations like this, sometimes, but not always. Sometimes it's for emphasis, right? Because it's important. That makes sense. Fair enough. Sometimes it's because it was changed. We have other scenarios of things like that, where I'm not sure the exact reason that then the author does this, whether it's like overcompensation to try to drill home, like, no, this was it. This is the truth. I'm not lying. Goshen, Goshen, Goshen. I'm not sure, but there are other scenarios like that. And it also could just be the dude just
kind
loved.
of cutting out. I don't know if you're cutting out for anybody else, but your voice is like cutting in and out a little bit.
YouTube, can you guys hear me?
Could just be me, though.
Maybe. We'll see. Thank you for saying something, though. See. Seems okay. So maybe it was Discord.
It could just be my Discord, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me know if it happens again, or try to leave and come back. Yeah, looks good. Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks for telling me, though. Okay, so I don't know. But it's just something that anytime it happens, I'm gonna think about it. Would there be a reason? Is it likely that this was changed for any reason? What would they gain from doing that? Is the author just overzealous about the geography? Is there a significance to it? Will something with Goshen happen later that you're like, oh, that's why. Maybe why this was emphasized so harshly is because 3 chapters from now, it's a central point of the story. Like, that happens too. It's not always nefarious. I'm not that much of a cynic. But it's something like, point it out. think about it. Wonder it, at least have it in the back of your head as you continue on. He presented himself to him, Joseph to Israel, his father Jacob, and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and I will say to him, my brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me," meaning like they've arrived. The journey happened. They're here. Happy day, hugs, kisses, crying on each other's necks, all that fun stuff. Now Joseph's going to go to Pharaoh and let him know, because this was a journey. It probably took quite a bit of time to let him know that they are here. "My brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. They are here with us. And the men are shepherds." This stuff becomes important. "And the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' you shall say," he's telling them, this is what you need to say in response to him asking about your occupation. "Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, in order that you may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every sheep herd is an abomination to the Egyptians." This is odd. It doesn't jive well what's going on here. We don't know what that means. I've never been able to find anything on what that means. And even logos is like, it's unclear, which is a good sign, because some of these commentators and study Bibles and stuff will just throw what they think into it. So when it's a resounding, like, we're not really sure what they're talking about, it's a pretty good indication that this is a weird thing. Sheep herders being an abomination to the Egyptians is an odd thing. There's nothing in Egyptian literature that I am aware of, or that I've been able to find another scholar say that they're aware of, that they were held in, like, to a low level of society. There's nothing like that. So what it could be, like a potential answer, is that it's because they're not Egyptian. So maybe within Egyptian culture, with Egyptians, there's no issue with sheep herders or herdsmen. But perhaps that they are coming from Canaan, they are of a different kind. Maybe others who are in that occupation, perhaps they are held to a lower regard. Layman said maybe it's perceived to be unskilled labor. Right, which is like the most reasonable answer. The weird thing is, if you go into Egyptian literature, any of it that we have, there's nothing that would make it seem like sheep herders were held at any, like it was cheap labor or unskilled labor. There's nothing like that. It was just a normal occupation from everything we have. Go said, could sheep herders be a euphemism for a certain group of people? Right, which is kind of what I'm getting at. Is that, to me, it seems the most logical answer, or the most likely answer, is that it's more of a who, not so much a what they're doing. It's more of who they are, who happen to be sheep herders, that make them, like Patricia said, something to the degree of unclean, not so much that they are sheep herders. And it seems as though maybe the author just had a weird way of expressing that. And maybe that's why we ended up with this. Aramaic is quite similar to Amharic, biblically, as far as the root word and tense. How does that apply directly? I'm curious if you could school us a bit. Ironic how Jesus is depicted as a sheep herder. Yeah, fair. But I just thought that's another thing, like, it'll always stand out. I think it's really interesting. I've never heard a good answer other than things to the degree of what we've kind of talked about. Is that the only reasonable way to answer it, seemingly, because nothing in Egyptian literature makes it seem like this is a real thing, is that maybe it's who, not so much what they were doing. And the author of Genesis just expressed it in an odd way that wasn't quite accurate or clear at the very least. Jacob's family settled down, chapter 47. We're doing good. Doing real good. Discord was stuttering hardcore on game night, huh? I wonder if that's us because we're not like super boosted or whatever. I'll have to look at that. I wonder if that's audio quality or if that's more like a server issue. Meaning, like, I wonder if that's something I can pay to fix or if it's something that is just happening on Discord. Layman said, true, leading sheep must be a skill, earning their trust and such. Right. The Egyptians sound pretty anti-Semitic. Possibly. Yeah. Possibly. And then once Pharaoh dies, all goes downhill from there, man. 47. So Joseph went in and told Pharaoh, my father and my brothers, with their flocks and herds and all that they possess, have come from the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen. And from among his brothers he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? Here we go. And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are sheep herds, as our fathers were. They said to Pharaoh, we have come to sojourn in the land. For there is no pasture for your servants' flock, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. And now please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you, meaning this is all yours. You guys, which was the promise that he gave Joseph. Settle in your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them settle in the land of Goshen. And if you know any able men among them, put them in charge of my livestock. Big thing. Pharaoh's livestock, in case you're half paying attention. Big thing. Back up to 4. We have come to sojourn in the land. The Hebrew word gur, G-U-R, links the migration of Jacob and his family with God's prophecy to Abraham in chapter 15. That his descendants would be strangers or sojourners, which is the ger, G-E-R, versus the Hebrew word here, G-U-R. That they would be strangers or sojourners in Egypt, which would precede this oppression. The oppression that is to come. Or like what happens in Exodus and before. Kind of. What happens next for Israel. Yeah, you could definitely call it oppression of a sort. So this here in 47, we begin to set the stage for the near future fate of the lovely people of God. And it is not a great fate. It is less than ideal. And now please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I wanted to hit this too, because I thought this was interestingly said. Pharaoh's statement reflects the language of a formal decree. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers. He speaks specifically to Joseph when granting permission for his family's habitation of Goshen. This indicates that his permission is a personal favor to Joseph, which I liked because we talked about that specifically last week or the week before, whenever the last time we did this was. The Pharaoh it was a personal favor. He was doing this for Joseph, which also sets the stage for what is to come when this Pharaoh is no more. If them being allowed to live and prosper with Egypt was a personal favor from a Pharaoh who really liked Joseph, what happens if that Pharaoh is no longer around? What is the most likely outcome? It sets the stage, and it's interesting. If you stop and you let that happen in your brain before you actually get there, it all clicks much cleaner and nicer, and it makes sense. Then the last one. And if you know any able men among them, any physically fit enough men to work, put them in charge of my livestock. The offer to oversee the king's cattle would result in an elevated status for his family, for the group from Canaan. They would have a higher than normal status because they were overseeing, similar to Joseph, overseeing essentially the kingdom. They would be overseeing all of the livestock for he who is king. Big deal. Verse 7. Then Joseph brought in Jacob, his father, and stood him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Jacob blessed Pharaoh. This is probably just a formal greeting of some kind. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many are the days of your life? I'm sorry. How many are the days of the years of your life? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life. And they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their sojourning. Make that make sense when you just read it one time. Tough stuff. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from the presence of Pharaoh. Then Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best land, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Ramesses is Goshen, as far as we can tell. This is one of those ones, y'all. The city of Ramesses, or Pi-Ramesses, the capital under Pharaoh, Ramesses II, was located within this region, in the same region. The city has been identified as Qantir, 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 which is also called Avarice and Tel Ed Daba. Good luck. Good luck. But Ramesses, Ramesses, if it's something you want to look into. What I have found as consensus among people that I trust is that Ramesses is Goshen. Good enough for me. I trust you guys. 12. And Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with food according to the number of their dependents. So they were allotted food, is what that is, because of the famine that has been happening, and that will continue to happen. People were given specific amounts of food based on the number of mouths to that home. There's too many phobias. What? I missed something. I'll catch up later. Okay, I want to read this. As seen in the following section, Joseph deals far more graciously with his own family, those who had initially wronged him by, selling him into slavery. Then he deals with them better than he deals with the people who welcome him into their family, which would be Egypt. So the also kind of setting the stage is that Joseph is giving preferential treatment to his family. And you could say Pharaoh is, but Joseph is allowing it. Joseph is letting his family, the people who literally sold him into slavery, live at a higher level, at a better level, better quality of life than the Egyptians who had brought him in and accepted him as family, rather than as a slave. Joseph had risen to arguably the highest rank in Israel, other than being the Pharaoh. He's functioning as a servant to his family, but he makes the people of Egypt servants to the Pharaoh, which is odd if thought about for longer than a few seconds. This scenario, as I've been saying, we are setting the stage for how this will all flip on its head come Exodus chapter 1, when this whole situation just gets topsy-turvy, upside down. Joseph and the famine. It's not you're slow. The Old Testament can be hard to follow at times, especially depending on the translation. I'm definitely slow. But yes, the Hebrew and Koine Greek to English make for a very difficult read. There is no doubt about that. No doubt about that. All right, Joseph and the famine. Now there was no food at all in the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain that they bought. What he had done is he had gone around to the inhabitants of these areas. He had taken all their money and he had allotted them grain. He had allotted them food for it. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when the money was all spent in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, Joseph brought the money back. Joseph and Pharaoh essentially spend the money. All the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? For our money is gone." And Joseph answered, "Give me your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock, if your money is gone." Well, their money is gone because you took it. So now you're taking the livestock too. And he's going to give them some food in exchange. So now the people will be without money and without livestock. Just so you have a clear picture. 17. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for their horses, the flocks, the herds, and even the donkeys. Even the donkeys, cat, even the donkeys. He supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock that year. And when that year had ended, they came to him the following year. And so she's yelling at me from downstairs. They came to him the following year and said to him, "We will not hide from my lord that our Lord is all spent." That our money is all spent. "We will not hide from my lord that our money is all spent. The herds of the livestock are my lord's. There is nothing left in sight of my lord, but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for food, and we, with our land, will be servants to Pharaoh." So, recap. Joseph took their money, gave them food. Took their livestock, including their donkeys, gave them food. Now, they're offering their literal bodies. They're offering themselves to servitude, as well as the land that they stand on, in exchange for food. There is nothing left, baby girl. You have nothing left at this point. This is desolate, which is interesting because that's what it's about to say. "And give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate." Things are becoming very stark in Egypt, y'all. 20. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for all the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe on them. The land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he made servants of them from one end of Egypt to the other. Again, remembering, keeping in mind that Joseph's family is living pretty well. These people from Canaan are living pretty well. The Egyptians have to be like, who the hell is this Joseph guy who is not one of us, but had risen past all of us to the highest ranks in Egypt? Then he brings his family and his people here who get to be tenders to the flocks of the king, having all of the advantages that come with that, while all of Egypt slowly dies, basically. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for all of the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe on them. The land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he made servants of them from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests did he not buy, because the priests had a fixed allowance from the Pharaoh and lived on the allowance that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their land, because they did not have to. Then Joseph said to the people, "Behold, I have this day brought you and your land." Joseph says to the people, the Egyptians, "Behold, I have this day bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Now here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land," planting. "And at the harvest you shall give a fifth to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own," a tax, essentially, "as seed for the field, and as food for yourselves and for your households, and as food for your little ones." So he's taken everything, but as they requested, he's provided them with seed so that they can attempt to grow. Whatever they grow, they are to be taxed 1/5 of the harvest, and they will keep the remainder. And they said, "You have saved our lives. May it please my lord, we will be servants to Pharaoh." So Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt, and it stands to this day that Pharaoh should have the fifth of everything, the tax. The land of the priests alone did not become pharaohs. Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt and the land of Goshen, and they gained possession. Oh, wait. Did I just get bounced out of here? No. Okay, it's just very repetitive. Sorry. Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt and the land of Goshen, and they gained possession in it, and were fruitful and multiplied. And this is the final, during this chapter, it's the final real paved the way for Exodus. Israel settled in Egypt, specifically in Goshen. They gained possessions in it. They built their culture in it, and were fruitful and multiplied greatly, and began to multiply. These people from Canaan, in other words, are beginning to take stake in Egypt, which with this Pharaoh is fine, because this Pharaoh has a thing for Joseph. That's a very tenuous situation. If everything you have, your land, your money, your food, your well-being, your status, if everything is contingent upon one guy liking Joseph, anything happens to that one guy, it's all trouble. It all disappears. In that type of system, where the one guy happens to be the ruling king, if some random guy liked them, nothing would have happened. But it is the king. So with the king, all things become possible. But the opposite is true too. Without the king, all awful things become possible. And when the time drew near that Israel must die, Jacob, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If now I have found favor in your sight, put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal kindly and truly with me. Do not bury me in Egypt. Let me lie with my fathers. Carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burying place." He answered Joseph, "I will do as you've said." And he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. Then Israel, Jacob, bowed his head upon the head of his bed. Bowed himself, upon the head of his bed. The burying place is Machpelah. Genesis 25, with Isaac and Ishmael. It's a recurring point of significance from the earlier parts in Genesis. Then, what was the other thing? Okay, put your hand under my thigh and promise. We've talked about this before, so I guess just a fun recap. There's some argument among scholarship about this, but what the general consensus is, based on other sections of the Bible that talk about this, put your hand under my thigh and promise. There is a relatively high possibility that what was happening here was men would hold each other's junk and essentially make a promise. It was kind of like a blood pack, but with junk. I don't know how else to say that. I was just going to say, don't ask about the thigh. We've talked about it before that. I remember at some point in the past, we had a really funny conversation about this whole thing. But that's what it is. It occurs other places. It was earlier in Genesis. We had the same thing. Genesis 24 is where that was. There are other places in the Bible where it seems more... I don't know how to say that, I guess. But it's plenty of other places. It's here. It's earlier in Genesis. It's in Exodus, the beginning. So we're going to see it again pretty soon. And then it's in Judges as well. It was a thing that happened. You just have to deal with it. It is what it is. I mean, I get it. We talked about too, your balls are mine. We talked about too that like, if you think about like the significance of generations, you think about the significance, no more male promises for me. You think about the significance of the seed, right? Not to be gross or weird, but the seed was everything. Like the possibility of children, specifically male because of the time period, but children nonetheless. The perpetuation of your line was extremely significant. So it's not crazy to think that like It's kind of crazy, but it could be crazier than this idea that we have where like a guy, you'd shake hands basically by the balls as this promise of respect on your children. Like you swear on your kids and then grab where the kids are, the potential kids, I guess. It makes sense. There's other theories. It is what it is. It exists. I'm glad they didn't just take it out. At least it's there. At least they force us to talk about it. Because Mystic, you have terrible luck. And if you were here the whole time, this would have been 2% of the night. But because you were super late, this is now 100% of your experience. I feel like it is divine punishment for being late. You forfeit your lineage if you lied to me. Basically, though. Like, basically, that's what it seems like it was. In essence, yes. Layman said, I think it was connected to swearing on the lives of the children. Right, yeah. Since they were dependent on their children in their older years. Well, not just that, but like the line was dependent on the children. So the guys just don't care anymore. But like, at this time, you having children, men, boys specifically, to carry on your name was more important than anything, almost. So it would make a lot of sense that they have this weird way of making it happen. If you shake more than twice, you're playing with me. Good God. Ugh. Shake on it has been thoroughly ruined by you guys. Ugh. What a great way to end the night. So we're at 48. These are... All right, here, I think what we're going to do is next Sunday, we'll just finish Genesis. So it's done. So next Sunday, we may just run a little late if we need to. But I'd like to just wrap it up. We've got 48, 49, and 50, and it's not terribly long. So I think that will be the plan. Because then we can just get moving on. Have you ever traded notes with an Orthodox Christian? What do you mean? What do you mean literally, though? Like literally giving them my like notes, my exegetical journal or something? But I guess either way, the answer is yeah. The Orthodox Christians were, at the time, like at the time I was going through school, were my favorite. Because they were the most rational. They were the most rational. They were the most exegetically sound, like in my experience. But that's totally anecdotal, just because of where I was, possibly. But yeah, I've had some of the deepest of all conversations I've had and sharing of notes, so to say, was with people who held to orthodoxy, for sure. Why would you put the scared one on my head?
He's not scared.
He's always scared.
Should I have gotten them by?
No.
Okay.
No.
You're just
Please,
making
for
a
the
little
love
bath,
of
so he's a
God,
little
no.
wet.
He's wet?
Yeah, that's why.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Hi, buddy. Oh, shoot. Wrong side. It is backwards in the camera. Hi, buddy. Hey there, pal. Snake hat.
David better be here.
David's right there.
Okay, good.
Everybody please like this great discussion. David, everybody please like the snake on the head.
You want a ball?
Snake poop. Snake boop, snake boop, snake hat.
Oh my gosh.
Mikkel said something to consider from Pharaoh's standpoint. Shepherds may also be a threat to their rule. If you think about it, on average, shepherds are independent, self-sufficient folks. That's an interesting perspective, yeah.
Tap on the head. Here you go. There you go. Good job. You got wrapped though.
Let's not get me choked out
You're
on...
not gonna get choked. He's a good boy.
I don't want him to cut himself on the headphones. Careful.
You got him.
Careful with this guy. And now I pronounce you Pentecostal. That was really good. That was very clever. Mikkel, that's interesting. I've never really thought about that. I'd have to think more. I don't know if it would account for it for me. Maybe like as an underlying tone, no matter what, as like just this underlying reality that is always there. That they're at least, at the very least, I guess, like out of most, they are this forever hiding in wait potential threat. I don't know. It's interesting. I definitely am going to think about that more as we finish this out. That's an interesting perspective. He is gripping the headphones very tight.
That's what he does. That's what snakes do.
The English word testify is related to the word testicles. Interesting. Y'all are color coordinated? Are we? Oh, you kind of are, yeah.
Huh.
Your sweater. What
It's
kind
a
of...
ball python, ironically, because we were just talking about balls.
Oh my god.
Call them balls.
That was fitting. Would you... If you meant to cut off where you did, then the answer is yes. I would say that. I would, in fact, say that. I think there can be more than one reason not to like someone and vice versa. Pharaoh probably had many reasons to show aversion to shepherds. What? Graves, I thought I knew what you were talking about, and now I'm confused. Would you say this channel is repent? Or reorth? I'm lost now. I thought I knew. Ghost, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure, yeah. I think Mikkel's point is like valid. I would, like, on a very hermeneutic level, that's probably a reality of the culture at all times. Which is, I never really thought about that. It's an interesting point. It's like, I see that as like an undertone. It's not a big thing, it's not a catalyst, but it's like this always existing cultural reality of just the structure of the economy and society. It's interesting. But Girl probably had many reasons to show aversion to shepherds. I don't know. I don't know. I guess like theoretically, yeah. But from like the Egyptian stories, I just wonder what, because there's really just no, from what I've found. So if you guys find anything, I'm very happy to be wrong, but I've never really found any indication of that in their own like historical texts. But if you guys read any of it and you find something, I would love to see it, because even among like commentaries and whatnot, I've not been able to find anybody who has found something. It just seems like that notion wasn't really a thing. So I think Mikkel's thing is pretty on point, at the very least. But maybe there was some weird cultural thing that just wasn't really written down. Or maybe it was one of these things like we find with some of the things with Israel, where it was so well known that it was never said. It never needed to be said, because it was so much a part of culture. I can see that too, for sure. It's just harder to, make a definitive like claim about that. None of the above docs. Sorry, I'm on my phone and I hate tapering on it. I totally get that. Reformed, Pentecostal, or Orthodox. Yeah, I would say this channel is nothing a docs, or none of the above docs, like Ghost said. I would speak for most here, and I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know anybody here who's like with us often who has a very strict denominational claim. And everybody knows that I am the least denominational person on the planet. So you'll never get that answered with me. When we study ancient stuff, that's what we do. I don't care for the Orthodox and the Pentecostal and all this man-made garbage, in my opinion. Like, read the books, learn stuff, pray, What kind of snake is that, Joe? It's just chilling on your dome. It's ball python. It is ball python. McRae had it. Joe's are a prophet. No, that is Cat. That has to be her.
If you turn his head, is just so that everybody can see how cute he is. Like your whole body, big guy. Nice. Look at that. Look at that cutie patootie.
Bringing in outside sheep would not be a positive thing. Right. Which is actually a really good point. So originally, Joseph was told to tell his family from Canaan not to bring the herd. No real reason was given other than you will have everything you need. You'll have the best of Egypt. They brought it all anyways. And in the story, we never get anything like nobody cares. Nothing's really said about it other than that they brought it. But that's kind of an interesting point, David. I assume you're getting at like maybe disease or insects of some kind, like bugs, ticks. There probably would be some kind of inherent risk of bringing livestock from a different area that wasn't bred there.
But people also gifted and paid for things using livestock.
Yeah, true. Good point. That's true. And trade was pretty heavy, actually. Mm-hmm. So maybe that wouldn't be a factor. We aren't any one vegetable. We're a salad. The very pro-social way to put it. All hail our nigga prophet. This is officially a serpent cult now. I feel like my neck is going to be so stiff.
It's not even that heavy. It's like 3 pounds.
I think I'm just afraid to like move.
He doesn't care, big guy. He's all good.
Well, the weight is not distributed evenly.
Would you like me to distribute it? I
can say
evenly?
That. No, because he's good and chill right now. McRae said, so that's a commandment by God. What will be the result of that to ignore that commandment? Or will there be? What is the commandment? The thing about the livestock, if that's what you're talking about, that wasn't from God. That was from Pharaoh. Good question, though, because I didn't specifically say that this time when I was talking about it. And that was at the very beginning. But if that's what you're talking about, don't bring the livestock in. Egypt will provide for you. That was Pharaoh who told that to Joseph. Pharaoh told Joseph to tell his people to not even worry about bringing any of their stuff. Because just bring the family, bring the kids, and come empty-handed, because we'll have everything for you. It's a good question, though, because you're probably not the only one who was thinking that. So I'm glad you asked that. Cows clip grass, sheep eat it to the ground. David's like an encyclopedia sometimes. For what it's worth, I give your show my endorsement so far, and I know a prince in Palm Springs has a security team. What? Palm Springs, Florida? Was it to trust it? Okay, that was about that. Yes, livestock. You lost. Okay. Yeah, no, that wasn't from God. I'm glad you asked that, though. It's a totally valid question, because I did not specify. Layman said, haha, that scalp is nice and warm from that brain going on hyperdrive. Oh, good God. All right, housekeeping, and then I'm going to bail because I have to take a state licensing test tomorrow. And I will never feel like I'm actually prepared for it. So I need to go study and whatnot. If you're watching this later and you're not in Discord, join Discord. There's a link at the top of the live chat. There's a link in the description of the video. All the, I don't know a pro-social way to say it, the S show that happens here happens there. So come hang out. Tuesday, we have one of the topic discussions. So in Discord, there's a little events thingy. Sunday's the canon. Tuesday is topic discussion that everybody votes on. So this week, on Tuesday is on a different channel at Tattoo Theist, but the topic is miracles, right? Miracles, yeah. Do miracles still happen today? What are miracles? We'll talk about some of the biblical miracles. What makes the difference between how much does God actually divinely interact, I suppose? And does he still, compared to what we saw in the Bible? So that'll be Tuesday. It's at 7 p.m. Central Time, so a little bit later than the other two. And then Thursday, we're picking back up the Book of Giants, but starting the very beginning of Enoch with the Book of Giants in line. So as we read through Enoch, the Book of Giants will be brought into it whenever it does parallel, which will be fantastic and very interesting and not nearly as fragmented as the beginning of the Book of Giants was, because the actual text, the Book of Giants, we don't have. We just have fragments on fragments. Enoch we have. So it'll be very clean for the most part. Enoch is a tough read, but it'll be very clean for the most part, and then the Book of Giants will be brought in whenever it makes sense. And then Saturday, we're going to do game night again, because that's fun. And that's at 6 p.m. Central Time on Saturday. Shepherds may very well become more than capable leaders, see King David. Yeah, shepherds were kind of badasses, actually. Underlying badasses throughout the entire Bible. And then the New Testament just is icing on the cake with the Great Shepherd. So there's something to that for sure. Good luck on your tests. Yeah, thanks. We'll see. What channel is game night on? Good question. Discord. So Sunday and Thursday are on @Live Bible Study on YouTube. Tuesday is @Tattoo Theist, and Saturday is just on Discord. So on Saturday, we just use the voice channel in the academic corner. So at 6 p.m., I'll just open this voice channel, and you can come and go or whatever. And it's been a good time. It's been very fun. It's been very inappropriate and a very good time. Heck yeah, Mikkel, learn to understand and communicate with the lead creatures who are drastically different from you. Then work on humans. Okie dokie, I don't quite understand the snake on your head, but maybe you can clarify Tuesday. Was it what happened last week?
I said that if you guys didn't hit the like button for the live stream, that I would come and put a snake on Joe's head. And David, aka Bondservant, said something around the means of do it. And I said, okay. But then I didn't get to do it because I was doing other snaky stuff. So this week I had to fulfill my promise and bring in my second largest snake to put onto my husband's head because I said that I would. And that was it.
She's a woman of her word, that is all.
Thank you.
It's also not the first time.
It's not the first time, but they're usually smaller.
That's true. That's fair.
We have to go clean your house. Come on, buddy.
Gonna watch Dune Prophecy now. This was good, Joe and Snake Clan. Good. Glad to hear it.
Good job.
Glad the Dune Prophecy. Ghost said, what if it was as simple as Egyptians preventing linen and silk over wool? I don't know enough, to be honest. I would have to look more at that. That's not even close to an angle I've ever looked at it from. But an interesting proposition nonetheless. So it'd be entertaining at the very least to look at that.
Love you, bye.
Post your opinions on that show in Discord, Mikkel. I'm interested and haven't seen any reviews yet. Oh, about the Dune Prophecy. All right, y'all. I got to go study. I love you guys. This was fun. I will see you Tuesday for miracles, which should be good. And remember, for the Tuesday stuff, where is it? I'm all over the place. For Tuesday, in the live stream area, podcast discussions or topics, every week we'll have one of these. And so if there's anything you want us to bring up during it, or if you want me to like actually integrate into the slideshow, get it to me early, but I can do that. So you just got to throw that in here. And then I'll bring these up during the stream and all that fun stuff. All right, love you guys. Have a good night.